Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. My name's Brando, Weed Commando. We're going full commando today, if you know what I mean. And yeah, I gotta get this mic closer. Apparently, I got all my levels up really high, and just still sounds like you can barely hear me. Sorry about that, guys. So we got this Utah thing going on, and I didn't know if I was going to I knew I was going to make a video about this. Come on. You know, like you have like the church and you got the people in the anti-marijuana people all of a sudden want to compromise with the people's ballot proposal. It doesn't sound good. It sounds really, really bad. And then, you know, I seen some headlines and brushed across a couple of stories before the actual compromise was finished being hammered out. And then I seen another headline after it got hammered out that it was finalized, and I assumed that the things that I had seen was the things that they settled on, but apparently it went a little differently. But not as... Let me just put it this way. I got a little pushback on Twitter for my initial reaction. So I felt like I would do my due diligence and go ahead and look into this. And this video is it might get a little long. So strap in. Here we go. We're going to start by watching some commercials from Drug Safe Utah. And this is why I don't feel like the people that put this initiative together, Utah Patients Coalition, and look at this initiative. You want to talk about people that put together something concise and complete, and knowing how other medical marijuana programs have been put together in other states that had success, and they can see different things that they wanted to get out of their system, and the level of, I don't know, participation that people could have in it. Smaller level people, not like, you know, only the big giant corporate warehouses growing the medical marijuana. And also, like, you know, we're talking about medical marijuana. A lot of people still think we're talking about, oh, well, we can just do the THC. And I read the comments section on the article I pulled, and it was... We might look at that if we got time. But anyway, all that being said, I don't think Utah Patients Coalition should have went in on this compromise. But the reason that it seems like they're going to get forced into some kind of a compromise is that, you know, the legislation that was put together, this here, the Utah Medical Cannabis Act. And apparently what's going to happen is they're going to vote on this. They're going to put together a special session of the legislature after the election, and supposedly, whether it passes or not, they're going to hammer this out in the general session and try to get this passed. And they claim they're going to get this passed in this special session. A lot of times, you know, you might see the government go into a special session at the end of the year. It's really rare for state governments, but the federal government almost never. I mean, there's usually enough people around to do some shady shit while everybody else is at home on vacation, and they got just enough votes to get it pushed through. But there's definitely not like an actual schedule. But this, I don't believe it. I don't believe they're going to get this done. I'll believe it when I see it. Let's just say that. I've seen so many legislators get handed the task of having to hammer out marijuana legislation, whether it be recreational or medical or whatever. They go to try to hammer that shit out, and guess what? They can't. They can't come up with an agreement. We've seen the whole East Coast pretty much try to legalize recreational marijuana over the last 2 years legislatively, and no one even got the damn car out. You know, the horse never left the gate. on any of it. Even when you have states that legalized, like Maine and Massachusetts, and then the legislator gets handed it, Massachusetts still don't have a dispensary open 2 years later. 2 years later, Maine still, I don't know what the hell is going on in Maine. I haven't looked into that in a while. But here's what's going on in Utah, guys. This compromise, when I say that this compromise was essentially demanded by this Drug Safe Utah group, which has been nothing but, you know, they've had one problem after another. I've reported on it when they were doing some phone scam or door-to-door scam or whatever. Like, I've followed this a little bit, and I've mentioned Drug Safe Utah every time they made a lot of noise. But this is ridiculous. And when I say that Drug Safe Utah is what kind of forced Utah Patients Coalition into the compromise thing, I don't say that they did, but the people that did definitely have ties to Drug Safe Utah, whether it be the legislative connections or whether it's some kind of church related connection or both, which Utah seems to have a lot of that going on. I don't know. But what I do know is that if it wasn't for Drug Safe Utah pressuring them and acting like there's some kind of a reason, you know, why any of their talking points became valid. And keep in mind that these guys are constantly, non-stop saying this or that because they want to protect the children. I don't even know what that even means. What does that even mean? We want to protect the children. We got to protect the children. It's just like non-stop refrain from the Mormon Church, the Utah legislative part of their government, the Utah ancillary parts of the government and the media. It's just ridiculous. It's like all you hear is this reefer madness that we've already heard a million times, but without even saying why or what the problem might be or what things that they're going to do to look out for the kids, they always are bringing up these kids. It doesn't make any sense. Because every regulation package I've ever seen in my life, and we're looking at this thing, not the General Assembly one, but the actual one that the activists put together that people will be voting on. This thing's huge. If you think there's anything in here that makes it so kids can somehow get marijuana and recreationally abuse it, you're insane. You're actually insane. Because look at these regulations, man. I didn't look at them details, but I guarantee you that there's things in there for packaging and this and that. There's absolutely no way they didn't look out for the kids when they put this together, because they knew that that was what your talking point would be. So they did things ahead of time knowing that. Inside here, I'm pretty sure, I can't point to it because, like I said, I didn't actually go through it. And I don't know what's different in here about that, but I do know that there's some differences between this and that. And we'll go over those. Like I said, this video is going to get pretty long, guys. Sorry about that. Damn, we're already almost 10 minutes in and I haven't even played the first clip. So we're going to, like I said, we're going to watch a few things here while I smoke some Ghost Mint cookies, strain I invented. It's not too much different than Platinum Girl Scout cookies, but it's more sativa than indica, which is cool. And it's basically Ghost Train Haze male and a Platinum female. But anyway, enough of that. You see, this is the sad part about medical marijuana being super restricted, is that there is some people out there whose half of the therapy that you could get from cannabis mentally is actually growing it. And I'm not some kind of professional breeder that has, like, you know, people growing my strains from coast to coast and talking about it all over the world like some kind of Gorilla Glue or some shit. I'm just some dude that likes to do cool shit in my spare time, and one of my hobbies happens to be breeding. It's a fun project to get into. But just overall, you should be able to grow weed, shouldn't you? And that's one of the things that got nixed. There's absolutely no home growing of medical marijuana in Utah once they pass this compromise bill. Now, will they pass the compromise bill? That's a good question. If the citizens vote yes on the initiative, they're going to pass the compromise bill. Let's get clear about that right now. I think this compromise bill, all this noise seems to me like just another way to make people be like, okay, I'm not going to vote for it, I think. Maybe they think that when they said, oh, either way, we're going to do this compromise bill, whether you vote in or not. And they're trying to sound like your friends. But make no mistake about it. Drug Safe Utah, still running their commercials, still doing their campaign, still full-throated on that they're against the proposal. So let's just see what they got here. These were just put up there 4 days ago. Here's their commercials. Sorry to torture you. I don't have TV and I don't live in Utah, so I have not seen any of these.
Utahns deserve a compassionate solution to medical marijuana, but Prop 2 goes too far. Prop 2 legalizes full plant marijuana and edibles sold in pot shops, not pharmacies. Pot shops next to homes and schools are not about medicine. They're about making marijuana easily accessible, allowing you to buy the equivalent of 120 marijuana joints at a time and to possess 200 joints in public. There's a right way to do this. Prop 2 is not the way.
Now that was weird. They sounded, I mean, you know, like, first of all, is this running on a loop or something? So like the first thing about it that I noticed was that they mentioned this whole thing about how, you know, one of the compromises is that you have to go to a thing called a pharmacy to get your medical marijuana. Before, it was just a dispensary. We'll talk about it later, but I mean, that commercial, they mentioned that. Oh, you have to go to somewhere else and not a pharmacy to get your supply. I don't see how that's a big problem. All right? And it's just... Anyway, next.
Utah needs a compassionate solution to medical marijuana. But Prop 2? It's not it. But why not? Guy talking to me through the internet. I'll tell you why. Prop 2 allows enough marijuana to smoke over 120 joints every 2 weeks, and there's no limit to the amount of marijuana allowed in homes. And Prop 2 requires no medical training to sell, dispense, or recommend medical dosages.
See, all these talking points in these commercials are what got compromised into the compromise bill. So when I say that these are the people that they had to do the compromise with, I didn't know if that was true or not, but it sounds very much like that's what went down.
In short, that's why a bunch of really, really smart people who...
All right, and now earlier in this video, there was some condensating bullshit. What was this?
It's not it, but why not? Marijuana, but Prop 2? It's not it, but why not? Guy talking to me through the internet.
But why not? That doesn't say anything right there. That's stupid. I'll tell you why not. Just watch my video. You'll see. And here's the last one.
Utah needs a compassionate solution to medical marijuana. But Prop 2? It's not it. But why not? Guy talking to me through the internet.
Same
I'll tell
one.
you why. Prop 2 isn't about medical marijuana. It's about putting Utah on a path to recreational legalization. Yes, really. And states with legalization have the highest rates of youth marijuana use in the nation.
That's not even true.
They also have much higher rates of marijuana-related traffic.
See, again, I mean, I hate to sound like a dead horse or just be redundant to the point where I might as well just not even make these videos anymore. But the only time that you see this data is when you see reefer madness from these anti-marijuana legalization efforts. And they've always, without fail, have only one source. And that's the Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Report, which is generated by a government agency that's actually a collection of local police who are all trying to protect their jobs by making these reports, padding numbers, using false statistics, falsifying numbers, padding the numbers. When I say that, I mean they literally have a system now where everybody that gets pulled over for a wreck or that gets in a wreck gets piss tested or blood tested. Now they're like, oh, all these wrecks were people that have marijuana in their system. But to them, they can use that data to say whatever they want. Oh, look at all these people that that were the cause of fatal accidents, and they had marijuana in their system, but they just cancel that last part and say because of marijuana. All right, now I'm not going to go through this. This is just absurd. And the guy on the internet, remember that earlier in the video, in the commercial? I'm that guy on the internet saying, quit the fucking stupid shit. We're sick of this. You think we're going to believe you? And you're going to put, you didn't even put the little source thing in the corner like they usually do. What's that about? Tell us that, you know, be proud of your source. More?
Yes. That's why a bunch of really, really smart people who care about you and your health oppose Prop 2. There's a right way.
No. That's the people that run this bullshit, and that's the people that made this compromise feel like it had to happen. It didn't have to happen. And the reason, and the way they blackmailed them was pretty, you know, pretty swift. They basically said, you know what, the legislator won't even take this shit up and start hammering out the details for you. I don't think that we needed details. Look at this. I think they got all the details right here. This is actionable on day one. I'm pretty sure it is. And the legislator, I don't know what they would even be doing. I'm sure in this bill it calls on the legislator to do something, because they have to be involved in the ongoing thing. You can't just have something legalized and then just be wild, wild west like Michigan tried for 8 years. And then they wrote a corporate takeover bill that probably isn't much different than this here, the compromise bill, that they supposedly will pass either way. So now Fox 13 in Utah has been doing some pretty good work debunking Drug Safe Utah throughout this campaign. And this is about a radio ad, so we're going to go ahead and run this video.
We usually focus on television ads, but we heard complaints about this radio advertisement and found out at least one station pulled the ad after running it once.
This is Dr. Bill Hamilton. Utah voters are being asked to consider Proposition 2, what proponents claim is medical marijuana.
First, what's medical marijuana? Drug Safe Utah seems to say it's not medical if it has THC and might get you high. That might explain their first claim.
Prop 2 is actually about recreational use, not medical.
Prop 2 only allows marijuana by prescription. In the long-running national debate, that means it's medical. Claim number...
All right, so one more thing I want to add to that is that he said that if it has THC in it, that it's not medical. The Drug Safe Utah commercial. But that's not true. THC is definitely medicinal, so much so that there's synthetic THC that's FDA approved and has been being sold for decades. It's called Marinol. You might want to look into that. And furthermore, like THC is very medicinal. In fact, most of the studies on the medicinal efficacy of marijuana has been done on THC. CBD studies have just started happening within the last 8 years. Prior to that, 90% of all the studies were done. Whether it was for positive or negative outcomes, THC. It's what the government has a patent on. The government has a patent on both CBD and THC.
One is fiction.
Sorry, guys.
Claim number 2.
Medicinal marijuana is already legal in Utah. Your doctor can prescribe it, or you can buy it over the counter.
A new Utah law only applies to patients with an illness that will, and I quote, produce death within 6 months.
So again, remember that, because we're gonna run into this again in the compromise.
Over-the-counter sales are for an extract called cannabidiol, or CBD. For the vast majority of Utahns and for many potential products, claim number 2 is fiction.
So far, 2 out of 2 false claims. Why was anybody supposed to go compromise with these guys? I don't get that. I do not understand this.
Claim number 3.
Proposition 2 legalizes full plant marijuana and creates a new industry of grow houses and pot shop dispensaries selling edible marijuana with unregulated high levels of the dangerous drug THC.
All right, everything about that statement is full of shit. But there is no such thing as high levels of dangerous THC that unregulated. First of all, no level of THC is high. It's just more pure. And if you have a more pure thing with less other things in it, you use less of it. And it's genuinely safer. So there's no dangerous levels of THC. THC can't kill you. THC can't cause permanent damage. THC doesn't have long-term effects that we know of. And definitely I can attest to that. I've been using it for over 30 years. So I don't, see, I've been using for over 35 years. So come on, man. That's enough of this shit. We're sick of you acting like marijuana is dangerous. In Utah, give me a break. These guys, this basically feels like the Mormon church running this campaign against it. And why wouldn't it be? They run pretty much Utah. But are you serious? You guys don't even like caffeine is not even allowed. So of course you're going to act like THC is Satan. But get over it. It ain't. Your church is I could talk about that all day, but we're not going to go there.
Some context. All states with medical marijuana establish a dispensary system because pharmacies can't sell it.
Thank you.
Proposition 2 includes detailed rules about inspections, labeling and packaging, inventory control, and more. Claim number 3 has facts cloaked with fear. We call that fudging.
I call that just head-to-toe bullshit. Anyway.
Are serious arguments against medical marijuana. You could say it's a
not
slippery
really.
slope. It's illegal federally. That psychoactive drugs need serious testing.
Nope.
But this instead is a...
All right, see, so all of his arguments are garbage too. Of course it's federally illegal. Let's change that. That doesn't need to be the way it is. And he said it was a slippery slope. That's one of their arguments, though, that it's some kind of a gateway to recreational. Now, if you're saying it's a slippery slope to heroin, then you're kind of a dipshit. And then the last one, he was like, what was it?
That is a straw man ad. They make an easy hook. That is a straw man federally. That psychoactive drugs need serious testing.
Yeah. About that, it seems like we've been doing some research. Oh, yeah, there's over, last time I checked, there was upwards of like 20 to 50,000 peer-reviewed papers and scientific papers written in scientific journals or in journals of reputable scientific, I would say, community acceptance instead of just some invented publication on the internet. We're not talking about bullshit. We're talking about real people that have been studying the effects of cannabis, cannabinoids, whole plant marijuana, whatever you want to look into, there's a study for it. There's and this is true of the National Institute on Health. The National Institute on Drug Abuse is an agency under the National Institute on Health, and they have been trying to prove some bad things about marijuana for a long time, and they couldn't, and they have the studies published. You can go look at them on their website. So I don't know what you're talking about, dude. And one of the hysterical things about that, well, it's a psychotropic or psychedelic or whatever they put a name on it, and then they're like, we need, psychosis, we need to worry about that. They're talking about someone's going to smoke a joint and become psychotic. And maybe even go into a murder spree. That's just insane, dude. That is not... There's nothing to that. There's never been anything that would make that conclusion apparent. So nobody's ever done what you think has happened, the psychotic thing. I guess we need to like take that off of your talking.
But this instead is a straw man ad. They make an easy argument that doesn't fit the facts.
Exactly. So what else do we got? All right, so here's a video about the compromise from the Mormon newsroom. I gotta say, it's a pretty feel-good video.
This is a pretty amazing day. It is a proud day for Utah. Opposing views on medical cannabis have come together for the good of the people.
We have a group of people who have come together to help create a better policy than exists in Proposition 2.
This bill compromise goes a long way to protect Utah's children, adolescents, and vulnerable populations from easier access to marijuana for non-medical purposes.
Marijuana will be distributed.
All right. It sounded like she said that we don't want kids to have it for medical access. Let's check that out again.
To marijuana for non-medical purposes.
Oh, okay,
Marijuana
non-medical.
will be distributed to patients by well-trained physicians and pharmacists who are qualified to do that very thing.
Now, when this sounds like a feel-good moment, this look on this guy's face says it all. This is not a feel-good moment. This is an unnecessary compromise, and all these people are getting up here feeling good about it because they know that they have capitulated to essentially Big Pharma. This is a Big Pharma bend, and there's more to it than that.
Cultivation, processing, and distribution of medical marijuana under the system will have, in fact, stringent controls in place to prevent misuse. The compromise also gives greater respect to zoning and local zoning laws and local communities.
While the church remains opposed to Proposition 2,
Of course.
and we've encouraged folks to vote against it, we now join with the broader community in support of this community solution. We believe it creates a framework that is good for patients, their caregivers, is good for children, and in our mind, that's good for Utah.
So again, they're talking about how he said that they're opposed to the proposition, but they're for the compromise. So that it has a feel to it that they're still going to go out and campaign against the proposition, which they are going to do, which they have already said they're going to do. And this is the Mormon Church speaking. And then supposedly they're going to support the compromise bill, which they don't have to do. I mean, I'm sure that they have influence on the votes or whatever, but essentially that's another one of those things where we're expected to trust you guys that you support it later. And if Proposition 2, if you're successful at influencing enough people to vote no on it and it doesn't pass, we're supposed to just believe that you're still going to be wholeheartedly for it like you just acted like you were. I don't believe you for 1 second, man. You sell snake oil.
During over 40 hours of these discussions, we found common ground on key principles. And in these negotiated modifications to Proposition 2, patient access is preserved while resolving opponents' concerns about the potential misuse of cannabis.
We're going to talk about patient access. Patient access is preserved very minimally. And I believe that this guy is representative of the libertarian people that had something to do with this thing being put together or something. I'm not sure. I should have looked it up. Sorry about that.
We're just so grateful for all the work that's been done to help provide hope and protection, both for children and families.
So we've heard everybody but except for that libertarian guy say the word children. And I don't know what there is in here or what there wasn't before that made it so the children had some kind of a... I mean, they're making access to cannabis. I don't know how much truth there was in those ads talking about 120 joints or whatever. I don't think that's true. But, well, anyway.
and to help maintain a sense of security in our communities as well. We're very grateful for all who have done so much for this.
I mean, think about it. Even if you were allowed to have 120 joints a day, you're not going to have that just given. What are you going to do? Give it to your kids, or just let it sit there so they can grab it? I mean, I don't know where the people act like medical marijuana would ever be something that would be accessed recreationally by kids on some kind of scale that is different than what kids already smoke weed today. Like, my God, man. I mean, kids smoked weed when I was a kid. Like, what is... These people are just... It's, like, hard to even believe that they've risen to the level of power they have. But then you think about it, and the reason that they got there is because of one thing. They didn't smoke weed. Rewind all my little clip things here. What do I got? This is the Desert News, Utah. Ben Lockhart. How the medical marijuana compromise bill differs from Proposition 2. Because God knows that Joseph Smith does not want to read that whole, this compromise. Holy Moses. Look at this thing. It's ridiculous. That's 34. How many pages? It's like over 100 and some odd pages. It's 100 pages longer than the real one that you'll be voting on. A new compromise between supporters and detractors of Proposition 2 arrived after weeks of fervent negotiations over significantly different views, is detailed at length in a draft bill which Utah's legislative leaders have promised to get passed with a special lawmaking session when a special lawmaking session convenes shortly after Election Day. And if you think they're actually going to hammer that thing out, I got a bridge to sell you. So the 126-page bill in its technical language was necessary in order to make sure the different sides of recent private talks were in fact on the same page in their compromise, Utah House Speaker Greg Hughes said this week. Quote, "If you agree on concepts, but you're not on the same plain language together, you're not entirely sure you're agreeing on the same things. And we found that when we put things to the language, there was different expectations of what that would mean, and it did inspire more discussion and deliberation," said Hughes, Republican from Draper. An unchanged Proposition 2 remains up for vote by Utahns on Election Day, but on Thursday, Herbert announced he would call a legislative session sometime in November after the vote in an effort to get the compromise bill passed regardless of whether Utahns pass or reject Proposition 2. So here's what I hope, and I hope that this isn't all just a ploy to get people to not vote, because they'll be like, oh, either way they're going to do this stupid thing, so why even bother? Because they're not going to do this stupid thing. Even if it gets voted yes and they're pressured to have to do it, because now if they don't do it, it stands as it was voted for by the people. And I don't even know how this legislative session is going to do it. If it's voted in by the people, I feel like they have to have a certain amount of votes on this legislation to make it override any details that were changed from the original one. So while everybody thinks that this is a compromise and it seems like a trick by the anti-marijuana people to get people to not vote, it's actually a trick that can backfire on them, because people will vote, and if they don't, now they're pressured. If people vote no on it, now they're actually pressured to have to hammer out a legalization bill for medical marijuana that Utah would have never even considered. Which begs the question, will they consider this if it doesn't pass? I don't think they will, guys, and I don't think they'll come to an agreement even if it does. Even if, you're going to have people that are going to look this thing over and they're going to be like, no, and it might not even pass. And it might need more votes than they can actually get to pass it to pass. And all the different... We don't know. We don't know the details. There's so much more to this story than I have access to even knowing. And there's some things I probably could have figured out before I stepped up to the mic, but there's a lot of other things I'm about to cover in the next few days, so bear with me. I'm sure that I'm going to guide you through this. All right? A lot of people are going to think, well, I'm not going to vote for this now because I don't like the compromise. You have to vote for the bill, the proposal. That's the only thing you get a chance to say, to voice your opinion about. So when the people have a massive turnout and the proposition passes in a massive landslide, that's pretty much almost like a mandate. Like, the legislators know that if they don't do the right thing after 70% of the electorate comes out and votes yes for this thing, then they're looking at maybe getting voted out of office if they don't do the right thing after the thing passes. So, you know, my advice will still be go vote yes for this thing, please. Okay, so key players on both sides promise to de-escalate their campaigning for or against the initiative's passage. Sure. The bill, about 100 pages longer than Proposition 2 itself, makes several noteworthy changes to how marijuana would be used by patients, recommended by doctors, sold, and regulated. Slight adjustments are made in the compromise bill over the list of qualifying conditions, which would permit someone to have medical marijuana card, though several conditions remain unchanged. Unfortunately, we have some red flags, guys, on the qualifying conditions. The compromise measure drops the phrase permitting those with, quote, an autoimmune disorder to qualify for a card. But it adds that anyone receiving hospice care is qualified. Yay! Expanding on current law regarding terminally ill patients. Expanding on it? I mean, hospice is when you're at the end of your terminal illness. I don't know what that even means. It's like if you were terminally ill, you could already have it, and then all of a sudden you're going to go to hospice mode. Okay, that's not a compromise. All right? That is not a fucking compromise at all. And what is autoimmune disorder? You might wonder. Autoimmune disorder is when your body thinks that you have something wrong with you, so it sends out all these immune system things to attack something that isn't wrong with you because nothing was, and it instead attacks you. And it's not a good thing. It's like rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus, erythematosus, inflammatory bowel disease, multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, Guillain-Barré syndrome, chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, psoriasis, Graves' disease, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, myasthenia gravis, vasculitis. I probably butchered all them names, sorry. But what we know about cannabis and its effects on autoimmune disorders and diseases can be found at the Calipa Clinic, which is a good resource where you can find first medical consultations specializing in treatments based on cannabinoids. So when it comes to cannabinoids, they have demonstrated their presence in almost every single part of our bodies thanks to the cannabinoid receptors CB1 and CB2. CB1 receptors have been found in the brain, the lungs, the muscles, the reproductive organs, the hypothalamus, the cerebellum, the hippocampus, the tonsils, the spinal cord, the intestinal gastronomic tract, and the vascular system, among others. CB2 receptors were found in the spleen, the bones, the skin, and the glial cells. Furthermore, we found that both CB1 and CB2 receptors are present in the immune system and in the liver, the cerebral bone marrow, the pancreas, and the brainstem. The influence of cannabinoids on the immune system has been widely discussed in the past 25 years. Several experimental models have been used using subjects who abused drugs and were exposed to smoking marijuana or injecting cannabinoids with experimental animal models and in vitro using cultures and immune cells treated with various cannabinoids. For the most part, these studies suggest that cannabinoids modulate the functions of the T and B lymphocytes and NK cells and microphages. I'm not a scientist or a doctor, so I'm kind of like winging it here on just even reading this shit. But if you do understand what this does mean, it basically means that you're doing good things if you're adding more cannabinoids to your autoimmune system prone situation. You know, if you have an autoimmune disorder or disease, you need more cannabinoids than what you can give it without using cannabis. So besides the studies which measure the effects of cannabinoids on immune cells, other reports show that these substances help to modulate the resistance of the immune system in the face of infectious diseases, particularly in front of diverse infectious agents. Finally, the third link important between the immune system and the host of the cannabinoids that have effects on the network of cytokines. The in vivo and in vitro use determined that cannabinoids modulate the production of the function of cytokines, thus having an influence of the activity of cell macrophages and lymphocytes. T, Th1, Th2. So, you know, technically, if you want to know more about that, I'll drop the link for this website below. Proposition 2 allows patients with gastrointestinal disorders similar to ulcerative colitis or chronic Crohn's disease to get a card, but the compromise bill doesn't accommodate related illnesses. Proposition 2 says a patient with chronic or debilitating pain can get a card if they are determined to be at risk for becoming chemically dependent on or overdosing on opioids. That sounds pretty legit. The compromise uses different language specifying that a person must be experiencing pain lasting longer than 2 weeks that is not substantially responsible to conventional medications other than opioids or opiates or physical interventions. So somebody on Twitter kind of like was acting like this is better. The compromise bill is somehow more open to people with any kind of pain. No, I'm reading it totally different than you, dude. What I'm reading here is that before it was pretty legit, chronic or debilitating pain, and if you were determined to be at risk of becoming chemically dependent on or overdosing on opioids, that basically says, hey, I got pain and I don't want to go take opioids because I don't want to get addicted to them. This pain lasts more than a day. So now you're saying the pain has to last more than 2 weeks and is not substantially responsive to conventional medications other than opioids. So how long are you supposed to take the opioids before you're allowed to do the marijuana? What's the point of even mentioning that that you have to have pain lasting longer than 2 weeks? We already said chronic or debilitating pain. So this is just an unnecessary, like this whole compromise, just an unnecessary bump off of the original proposal. And then, unlike Proposition 2, the compromise bill stipulated that a doctor who wishes to recommend cannabis must complete 4 hours of continuing education in the area of expertise before getting licensed and do the same every 2 years to renew it. I don't think that's that unreasonable there. The initiative would prohibit local municipalities from enacting zoning that keeps medical marijuana dispensaries away from the simple basis that they are dispensaries. The compromise bill adjusts that to say local government cannot prohibit a medical marijuana pharmacy in areas allowing, quote, a business that sells alcohol or a tobacco specialty business. That's ridiculous. Who cares about the alcohol and tobacco? And by the way, you can have those right next door to whatever. It doesn't matter. There is no special thing that says that a tobacco business or an alcohol business can't be near something else. This is only something they're doing with medical marijuana for some reason. I've never understood it. They act like they can say, oh, it's because of the federal law. Federal law prevents you from having illegal, illicit drugs 1,000 foot from a school. That's it. So I don't know what they're talking about. The compromise bill keeps a modified version of a controversial affirmative defense provision in Proposition 2, which allows a person to fight a marijuana possession charge before a certain date on the basis that they would have been eligible for a card despite not having one. So you don't even have to have went to a doctor yet for that to work, right? But the compromise bill says that in those cases, the marijuana must be in a medical dosage form and an individual must have pre-existing relationship with a qualified medical provider. All right, so I guess I was wrong on the first one. So you already went to the doctor and you get a piece of paper and you got to wait for the actual card to get in the mail, to come in the mail. A lot of places are not going to let you use that piece of paper to get medical marijuana. I know this because that's how it is in Michigan. To this day, a lot of places wouldn't do that. And, you know, you got to have the hard card, you'll hear. But the thing about it is this compromise is a little bit weird because now they're saying that you have to have the medical marijuana in all these things that are basically like as if you were a hard card holder. And you can't just oh yeah, all of a sudden, you know, you're going to a medical marijuana doctor after you get the ticket for possession. It basically kind of neutered the whole affirmative defense. Sorry, the affirmative defense literally is basically saying, I have a condition which would qualify me for a medical marijuana card. I just haven't went and got one. So now you're prying me off my couch to go get one. Well, that's not what this new thing is. This new thing is basically like, oh, you know, but if we catch you without this medical dosage form marijuana, which I think it's just like a ground up gram in a blister pack. Absurd. Anyway, just like Prop 2, the compromise bill prohibits state law enforcement from lending their efforts to enforcing federal laws on marijuana when there is no reason to believe state laws related to the substance are being broken. In contrast to Prop 2, the compromise bill will make explicit that the unauthorized giving or selling a marijuana product to another person is a Class B misdemeanor or a Class A misdemeanor if the recipient is a minor. Pharmacies. Pharmacies. Each facility that sells medical marijuana would be required to employ a licensed pharmacist. A change from Prop 2 and changes their name from dispensaries to pharmacies. I guess Drug Safe Utah got their way on that one. You know, this is the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. What are you talking about? It's not a pharmacy, and you don't need a pharmacist there. What was that, Oklahoma that tried to do that? Or was that Utah? Well, this pharmacy thing is, I've heard it before, and I've reported on it before. It came up before. What is it? Why would we want a pharmacist sitting around at a medical marijuana dispensary? That doesn't make any sense. They're kind of like ignorant on the whole endocannabinoid system, and therefore they don't know what they're talking about when they're trying to recommend anything for anybody when it comes to medical marijuana. So they can't even do the recommending. What are they doing then? They're just sitting there making sure nobody's getting high on the job and nobody's just slipping their buddy some nugs. I mean, this is just insane how ignorant these people that are against marijuana, and we watched their commercials and listened to their radio ad and seen Fox News debunk their radio ad. So why in the hell would we ever have to compromise with people like this? It doesn't make sense. It's like compromising with a 2-year-old. It's like compromising with a terrorist. No, it literally is like compromising with terrorists. Prop 2 would allow at least one dispensary in every county, and more in Utah's most populous counties. But the compromise bill limits the number of medical marijuana's pharmacies to 5. And I mean, that's statewide. I know there's more counties than 5, and there's more populated areas than 5. And this is unless the state determines that that's not sufficient to meet the demand. I guarantee you it's not. A state-operated central fill pharmacy would also fill orders that a patient could have picked up at one of the state's 13 local health departments. So I guess that ups it a little bit, but what does that even mean? Under Prop 2, a patient may personally grow up to 6 of their own medical marijuana plants if they live more than 100 miles from the nearest dispensary. Which I say is total bullshit, but it's better than the compromise because that's not even allowed at all. No growing, no home growing, period. Not even 6 plants. 6 plants does not facilitate a person the ability to grow their own medical marijuana. You need to grow at least 10 plants to be able to have a steady supply of marijuana products. And to limit people, this is just all because of people wanting to make big billions of dollars off of the sales of marijuana in their little stores that they have envisioned in their little heads. The greedy people are making it so people can't grow their own medicine. And the politicians don't give a shit about you growing your own medicine. They only care about the greedy people, because the sick people that want to grow their own medicine, they don't have thousands of dollars to stick in the politicians' bank accounts and pockets. And that's what this is all about, guys. This is all about that. The compromise bill says medical marijuana pharmacies must undergo, quote, continuing education in order to stay licensed. So these pharmacists, I don't even get this, man. I don't know what they need to go through education to stay licensed for. They're not going to know anything about weed when they first get there, I'm guessing. So now here's the final bit, and it's about consuming marijuana. In contrast to Proposition 2, the compromise bill does not allow patients to purchase unprocessed marijuana flower unless it is broken up into a blister pack, with each blister containing no more than 1 gram. That's insane. I mean, it really is. I'd like to know how many grams you're allowed to buy at a time or whatever. I don't understand that. I'll have to look more into this. I might not actually make a video, but I'm going to look more into it. Okay, aside from that, the only authorized form of medical marijuana use under the compromise bill would be a capsule, tablet, concentrated oil, liquid suspension, topical substance, sublingual pill, chewable or dissolvable pill, skin patch, or in limited circumstances, a resin or wax. The compromise bill does not allow patients to use edible marijuana products, whereas there is no such restriction in Proposition 2. So that's a big deal too. No edible products. This bill isn't very commercial friendly for the, the kind of medical marijuana corporate boom down that we were used to seeing with other people, other states' medical marijuana programs. This is just a compromise of the kind of thing that definitely there was somebody from Big Pharma in the room. There was somebody from the mindset that they needed to do this so that there was no home grows. And that could have been from any of the factions that are against legalizing marijuana in Utah, quite frankly. It wouldn't surprise me if all of them were against home growing, just like all people pretty much anywhere that aren't. I don't even know what to say, man. I mean, I'm a grower, so you just don't have legal marijuana or medical marijuana without the ability for people to grow their own marijuana. It's that simple. I mean, it really is. Now, when it comes to the commercial handling of the industry, I understand that you got to have big players in there to make sure that the demand is met. I have no problem with that. We can all exist in the same sphere. And if you don't think we can, you're gonna really spin your tires trying to do this green rush shit. Because basically, people, this green rush isn't the thing that you think it is. The green rush is, I don't know how to really put it. It's not really a grassroots thing. People that really I'm sure that everything that you guys do trying to make your billions of dollars is going to be a thing, and it's going to work and be successful to a certain degree. But while you're trying to still arrest people for growing plants and trying to arrest people for, holistically handling marijuana like the harmless herb that it is, you're going to lose. You're going to lose the battle of public opinion. You're going to lose, ultimately could lose money because people could be boycotting any kind of going to some commercial zone to buy weed. I mean, it already sounds like something people are boycotting in California to a certain degree. And like I said, you'll never get everybody out there in the public to be like, oh yeah, going to buy weed at the dispensary is just totally stupid. Because most people just don't care. It's just a convenience situation. So whatever, man. I'm kind of just going on and on. We did have comments, and they were cringy as hell, so I didn't really look too much into them. Like right off the bat, oh, we like the bill, but Prop 2 is horrible. Okay. I didn't even read Prop 2, so I'm guessing that they just read the differences and now they think that it's awesome. I didn't see really anything in there that, like, they kept saying, oh, we protected the children with this compromise. I didn't see anything like that. So, yeah, most of these are negative towards, legalization. However you slice it, dice it, roll it, package it, it's still a drug to get addicted to, period. And the government wants a hand in it to get more money and more power, period. That's just not what it is, man. Sorry. This is both crazy and unneeded, but it is what you get when a church is allowed to be involved with the medical regulated legislative proposals. Exactly. Are doctors required to have 4 hours continued education for prescribing opioids and addictive anti-anxiety drugs that are so commonly distributed to Utah? Go address the actual serious problems of the opioid and controlled substances addiction in Utah and vote Proposition 2 all the way. And then you have these, Prop 2 is merely an entrance into recreational marijuana. A recent article in the American Journal of Psychiatry titled A Population-Based Analysis of the Relationship Between Substance Use and Adolescent Cognitive Development points out one of the problems of marijuana use. We are creating a new generation of citizens whose ability to function in an adult life is compromised. Oh, really? What are you trying to say, dude? Because I'm an adult. I've been smoking weed pretty much my whole life. So I don't know what you're talking about. Adolescent cognitive development was not affected whatsoever. In fact, I don't know what kind of grades you got in school there, Owl, but I always got A's. Never got anything but A's. The compromise is a charade. Oh, okay. Here's a good one. The compromise is a charade to displace the will of the people. Much of their television commercials, reefer madness, it will be everywhere. Sorry, no, it won't. Right. They're talking about the reefer madness where they're like, there's going to be pot shops on every corner or whatever that crap was. Like, give me a break, man. Good job outlining changes. I have sons with Crohn's who might benefit from this. I wonder why the category was dropped off from the draft. I don't think the Crohn's was. It was just things related to that had similar symptoms. And obviously autoimmune diseases. That's ridiculous that they cross that off, because that's a huge give to the big pharma. And I'm pretty sure that the way that this pain thing was interpreted isn't good either. I like this. Here, amazing all the concern over a non-addictive plant. Come on, people. How many people have become addicted and died from marijuana compared to OxyContin? So I'm not going to read too many more of these. There's only 17 of them, but oh, listen to this. Thanks, Ben, for providing insight into the 100 pages of safeguards for our families. And somebody else was saying, not sure how this is a compromise. For those who support Prop 2, now is not the time to let down your guard. Exactly. And like I said, this whole thing seems like, to me, a ploy to get people to not vote, to just be like, okay, I don't have to go vote for that now. They're going to hammer this out either way, and they're going to do that compromise bill, so I don't need to vote for it. No. Go vote for it. Go vote yes for it. You won't regret it. All right. That's it for this. Links will be in the description. Hit the subscribe button. Peace out.